art of wrestling with professional wrestler Colt Cabana.
All right, how you guys doing? Come on in, sit down, get ready, relax. We're about to get into it. This is the Art of Wrestling, a professional wrestling podcast. It's a life podcast. It's a personal journal. It's an entryway into the minds and souls, the hearts and the lives of the people involved in the world of professional wrestling. I am your host. My name is Colt Cabana. I'm a bike rider. I'm a hanger-outer. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a podcaster. Most importantly, though, I am a professional wrestler. I am sitting here live in my studio apartment in Chicago, Illinois. Before I go any further, this fan-supported and listener-supported podcast, supported by people just like you. Give it to you free of charge every single Thursday. ColtCabana.com, iTunes, SoundCloud, wherever you get your podcasts from. A couple great ways that you can support, rate, review, and subscribe on iTunes. Help that algorithm out. Help us get noticed. Tell a friend. Social media that fucker out, or if you got a couple of bucks in your pocket, head on over to ColtMerch.com, digitalcolt.com, t-shirts, buttons, pictures, posters, DVDs. Those VHS shirts are up and selling. Also, Marty and I do some digital download commentary over The Chaperone and Body Slam. Fun movies you can watch along with us. Grab those at ColtMerch.com and digitalcolt.com. So, Magnus was on the show. Brutus Magnus, Nick Aldis. He's got a lot of different names going on these days. That's part of the game these days. Is you got to settle on a name and hope it sticks forever. I think Kevin Owens was kind of lucky. That's a hard one. Kevin Steen, what are you going to change him to? Max Overdrive? I just made that up. It sounded decent. No, but he got Kevin Owens. And so, whenever he comes back to this world, he can be Kevin Steen again or Kevin Owens Steen. It's a good transition. So, I think, I don't know Nick. I guess he's Nick, Brutus, Magnus, Aldis these days. He's a lot of stuff. He's a great wrestler, a great performer, good looking dude. He's a good looking dude. I could say it. I think it's the British twang that will always get me. And he's on the show. And one thing I've noticed, and that I want to get into a little bit, sometimes I notice we start talking about muscle and fitness and body stuff. And as I'm talking about it, I hear all the lists, half the listeners. Some people are really interested in it. And then I realize, probably half these people don't want to hear this at all. It is interesting. And we get into the wrestling. But I remember we started off talking about some body stuff because he's got a book out and he's selling that and he's plugging that. And the whole thing isn't a plug on that. But that's when you write a book, it consumes your life. And I'm sure he's very into it. And he is very into that kind of lifestyle and getting that shit done. So I just thought that was interesting. I remember doing that conversation with Brian Cage, and half of it is just about bodybuilding. Although a lot of people like that episode. So there's a little bit of talk on that. There's a lot of talk about the idea that everyone just thought he came into wrestling just not ever being a wrestler. And I thought that was some interesting stuff, how he'd been on the grind, he was doing the job, he wanted to be a wrestler, and a smart guy, just a real, maybe too smart for his own good in the world of wrestling. I always kind of compare it to I don't know, when I got to sit down and do those podcasts with Austin, you could tell obviously Steve is very smart in the sense of he knew what he was doing, but there was a little bit of that, and he'll admit it, that just country redneck to him that helped him guide himself to the top. But sometimes when you're in your own head too much, it could be detrimental. Not saying that's the problem with Nick. Probably the problem with me. I think I'm in my own head a lot too, and sometimes you just got to ride it out. And it's a fun position to see where he's at right now. A bit of a crossroads, I guess. Obviously, there's money to be made with this guy. Like I said before, good-looking dude. And I think Jeff Jarrett is trying to capitalize on that, but anybody could capitalize on that. With Nick moving forward, not much to talk about this week. I guess we could really get into everything. I did have one thing written down. Last week I talked about going on television and doing something I kind of regretted just to be on television. I thought it was interesting. Literally the next week after doing that monologue on the podcast, almost a couple days afterwards, I found myself at Pro Wrestling Syndicate, one of my favorite places of all time to wrestle. Had a blast there, by the way. Wrestled EC3. There's a fun Instagram picture that I put out there of he lost the match. Yeah, I beat TNA World Champion. Look at me bragging like that's a thing. Yeah, don't like to brag. Beat the TNA World Champion by count out. And he had to declare his sins. Did I say that right? We were in a church. It was Rosh Hashanah. And he had to say his sins. Both had a chuckle, had a good time. But while we were there, Comedy Central was filming something. The Megan twins, who have taken over the Virgil franchise, just like they did for the Iron Sheik, got him a spot on the Larry Wilmore show. doing some Comedy Central thing. And of course, PWS, smart, why wouldn't you? Take a couple of bucks, helps the promoting, helps knock out some of those flights that come in. You know, when you fly in Mantar, it's nice that Comedy Central helps flip a bit of the bill. And they were doing a comedy shtick. I don't know how funny it was. But at the end, during the show, Tommy Dreamer had got the booking to be on Comedy Central, thought it was very cool. And he was supposed to slide in, make the beatdown, and save the comedian from getting beat down by Virgil or whatever it might be. When he got there, and maybe this isn't my story to be told, but I like to tell about the situation. When he got there, they said you're going to put on a cop outfit and you're going to beat down Virgil and yell out, "White people rule, white people rule, white people rule." Tommy Dreamer gets there and goes, "No fucking way," and just leaves. Just leaves. Like, that was a test for Tommy. He passed with flying fucking colors, unlike old fucking Paperboy Cabana over here, who did not pass his test. And hats off to Tommy Dreamer for being the smart fucking human and being like, that would be the dumbest thing I could ever do. So I think the writer ended up doing the part, and hopefully he gets ridiculed for it. Also, hats off for Tommy Dreamer finally debuting on House of Hardcore in November. You'll hear about that in the upcoming events, but I'm excited to make my debut there. And also excited to just be around Tommy Dreamer. He's an exciting person to be around. Well, he's not exciting necessarily, but good energy, loves wrestling, and I like being around that and his crew. So I look forward to that. I know Tony DeVito is very happy that I will be there. That picture on Instagram of me and EC3, a lot of Tommy Dreamer quotes. It's not gay, it's pro wrestling. So if you're in that area, come see me over there. Also, I won't forget to say I was at AIW this weekend in Cleveland. They are doing great things over there. The Cleveland fans are amazing. It's a good crew over there. That's the solid. And I don't mean like even in the locker room. The locker room's a great crew. Wrestled Cheech and Colin Delaney with Chuck Taylor as my surprise partner because Cliff wasn't able to make it. Been seizurized at home. But they have a good, fun following and crowd, you know, that I've been going since the very early stages, and it's fun to watch that develop. It's like the gentrification of independent wrestling. Some people sway back and forth on gentrification. I think in AIW's case in Cleveland, it's a great thing. Doing good things over there, doing good things in independent wrestling. Song of the Week this week is brought to you by DraftKings.com. Your season-long fantasy football team may be doing strong, but you don't have to wait till week 16 to get paid. Put your fantasy skills to the test every week this season at DraftKings.com, America's favorite one-week fantasy football site. 1 week fantasy means no season-long commitments. Got an injured player? No problem. It's basically a new season every week. You're never stuck with the same players. DraftKings is crowning a new millionaire every week this season. Turn your love of football into a life-changing payday. Just pick your players, pile up the points, and pick up your cash. It's just that easy. You've never experienced football like this before. This isn't fantasy as usual. It's DraftKings. It's the big time. Hurry to DraftKings.com now and use my promo code WRESTLE to play for free for a shot at $1 million in this week's Millionaire Maker event. Enter WRESTLE for free entry now only at DraftKings.com. DraftKings.com. Hey, that's DraftKings.com. All right, the song this week is by Pickering, Perrin, and Rhodes. I think they sent this to me. I forgot where I picked this up. Sorry, but it's called Coco Beware, and it's based off of Coco Beware. It's great. Enjoy it. We'll be back with Magnus.
Name is Coco! Coco Beware! He is a good guy in a steel chair! He's got a parrot! His name is Frank! He's very muscly! He's like a tank! His name is Coco and I like him very much! He is a nice man! Prefer him to Ricky Flair. He is a nice man with a face and legs. Body slam, he's your man. Body slam, he's your man. Body slam, he's
Harpo endorses your underwear.
Promotional consideration paid for by the following.
We're also sponsored by Topps this week. I grew up on Topps, trading cards, getting them signed, sometimes getting ripped off by Todd Glassman because for some reason I really wanted a 1987 Sid Bream card with the wooden frame. I think I offered him a lot of good stuff because I needed that Sid Bream because the Braves were doing good and he was the first baseman, and I think he had like a sweet score in the World Series. But now Topps has brought the world of trading cards to the digital world. Topps Huddle features officially licensed NFL digital cards. Fans can collect cards with their favorite players from their favorite teams. Watch your collection grow by opening packs and making trades with other users. The Topps app does so much more, though. Play cards and earn points in real-time daily fantasy-style games based on how players perform on game day. Have fun with that fantasy world through Topps. Over 300 million Topps digital packs have been opened since 2012. For football and especially fantasy football fans, this app is a must-have. Download it absolutely free in the App Store or Google Play and get 10 packs for free today. Check them out at Topps.com.
I ain't taking my damn Alpha Brain.
Yeah, I think it's a different one.
I love that.
Alpha Brain?
I haven't done. No, I'm not. I'm bulletproof. I get the bulletproof deal. Well, actually, I think my deal just ran out with them, but they do all that sort of stuff too.
You had a sponsorship with them. Oh, who's Bulletproof?
They make the bulletproof coffee.
It's definitely a song by a girl from the UK, right?
Is it?
Bulletproof.
Oh, yeah. What was the name?
That was a big song a couple of years ago.
It was. Yeah.
A good song too, like one of those club songs.
They made quite a few. I don't know. Was it just the girl or was it a group?
Baby,
yeah,
you're bullet. There it is.
Yeah. God, I can't remember her name. Anyway, no. Bulletproof coffee was it's sort of a bit of a fad thing that's taken on. A lot of Hollywood people have started doing it, where you put the butter in the coffee and the. You ever heard about this?
No, that can't be good for you.
Well, there is some science to it. I've been a big proponent of good fats and healthy fats, and I think most people. Unfortunately, we still conventional wisdom is still quite a long way behind what is actually fact, which is saturated fat and a lot of the good fats found in things like avocado and salmon and stuff like that. But also even the saturated fats found in things like red meat and fish and other things that have often been touted as bad are actually very beneficial to your health in a lot of ways, especially for men. And while we've been sort of told to steer clear of them for a long time, that it's not really true.
Now, is food subjective like wrestling is? Because if they had found the it seems like every day someone comes out with a new diet.
Yeah, 100%.
And a new thing. And no one really, do we really know what's what?
No, we don't. But we're also always learning too. And I think that, and I hate to use this as an awful segue to like plug my book right off the bat, but one of the things that I talk about in the book is that, look, not a single thing I write in this thing is an exact science or an instruction.
Okay.
Nothing is an instruction. It's half instructional, half motivational. Like this is the stuff that I'm 99% sure works. I can never tell you anything works 100% because every single person, based on their genetics, based on their upbringing, based on their ancestry, their environmental factors, every single person's body reacts differently to what they put in it and any kind of physical stimuli. So it's like, go out there and
it's like wrestling in a bit, right? Like when I do wrestling seminars, I'm like, listen, this isn't 100. This is what I like. This is what works for me. You seem to think I'm pretty good. You paid for a fucking to come train with me, right?
Yep. We had this conversation with Bill DeMott when we did that camp with him a few weeks ago, where he said, look, I know that my reputation precedes me, and that there are going to be certain things that I say to you or to whoever else where you're going to think, well, my trainer didn't tell me to do it that way. But today you're learning from me, and I'm going to tell you to do it a certain way, and that's kind of the way it is. And I understand that, and
you can see how well my training has worked out. Sorry, you opened me up to so many. I'm not even going to hit it.
No. We'll breeze past that. We don't need to. But to go back to the whole food thing, yes, it is subjective. There are things that are, for the most part, universally understood and recognized by people who you should trust. But most of the time, it's like, hey, if you find that, like, I'll use an example. anyone who sort of follows bodybuilding, which I don't know how many of your listeners do or don't, but there was a bodybuilder called Lee Haney who won the Olympia a bunch of times. He's not as touted as like the real famous guys like Arnold stuff.
Ronnie Coleman.
Ronnie Coleman, and well, Lee Haney was kind of a precursor to Ronnie Coleman in a lot of ways, but like he for some reason, when he was like contest dieting, I read that he would always just switch out all of his carbs for pineapple, which a lot of people would be like, that's so much sugar, like all the fructose, but it worked for him. You know what I mean?
He wanted his ejaculate to taste good. I think everyone
I'm sure he did. I mean, that's what we've heard.
Okay.
I can't attest to it. I can't say,
So when I grew up, I ate only hot dogs, corned beef, and pizza. So because you said it's about when people they're growing up and their eating habits, and I feel that's like stuck on me for in my midsection for years.
It's a big that's a big sticking point for a lot of people in Western society. I was the same way. Like I think back now and think if I hadn't have been bitten by the wrestling bug at like 12, 13, 14-ish, but also that it kind of tied in at the exact same time that I really decided that I didn't want to be this skinny, unimpressive kid anymore and be this sort of much more impressive sort of physical looking guy. I had a better what they call body image now, I don't know how healthy I would be right now because I think back to the stuff I used to eat every day. I'd come home from school and I had an allowance from my parents, like it was like a $5 a week or something. But I think back and I used to just stop in at like either like there's like a little fruit and veg shop near the bus stop, or you'd walk across the other side of the village I lived in and go to like equivalent of like a 7-Eleven.
Yeah.
And you'd get like just the amount of crap like every day, and I think
the
like, that's
weird
awful.
kids were the ones that ate the vegetables, though.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I think every kid went and ate the Oreos and ate the cookies.
Yeah.
And I don't know when that stops.
I don't know what the Chinese kids are doing. I'm about to make a real socioeconomic kind of observation here because now that we look at our generations and where we're heading and like our performance rates and everything like that, like there's a lot to be said for what we've been putting in our mouths for a long time. Absolutely.
Yeah. I guess I speak for the white kids, and like UK counts as the white kids.
Yeah.
I guess we were
the Western kids.
Right. Okay. Essentially. Yeah. But also those kids that, and I don't know if it's the same for you, but for those kids who ate the vegetables and the broccolis, those were the one with the very, very strict parents, and those are the ones that rebelled like crazy.
I mean, if you're going to talk about parenting, I mean, I'm in the very embryonic stages of learning those things, but yeah, you have to be careful of that too. Anytime I've done any sort of long interview where it's about my entire life, which is not very often, but I always said I do think I was raised quite well. Like I think that my parents have quite a good balance of fairly strict. Like we were sit at the dinner table and eat what was put in front of you type of family. Like that was quite, regimented in that respect. But then there was also some leeway. It wasn't my way or the highway, but it was like my way while you're under my roof.
Mm-hmm. Where'd you come from?
I'm from a little village called Docking, which is...
You keep on saying village. Is that because it's like a legit village, or that's how you call it over there?
In England, you have villages, towns, and cities. Like in America, it's just...
A village sounds like you had a hut and there's not a lot of people there. Like,
well, it's funny that because a village, like if Docking is a village, I'm sure there are classifications. I can't tell you what officially classifies you as a town or a village. I'm sure it probably goes back to like most of the time. A lot of these things classifications are going back to like what kind of religious building you had there. But I do find when Americans come over, they're always like Mickey when she first started coming over, to visit like with my family and stuff. She was astounded that how these tiny little villages that have like a population of maybe 1,000 people have these huge like Gothic churches, but every village does, it was just that, that heavy sort of Church of England Protestant sort of era.
And also small place, so just everyone just put all their money into the church because that's what they were all about.
Yeah, when you think about it, you think like, what was the rest of this village like when this place was built in the 1800s? Like, it's mind-boggling.
So it was a small town.
Yeah, very
Or
much
small
so.
village.
Yeah. Probably, I think population somewhere. I mean, probably when I was growing up, there's somewhere in the region of 1,000.
Wow. And then I also, people from small places, I like to ask, like, are you the number one person out of docking? Is there anyone?
I think I'm listed on Wikipedia as the notable resident. I think
there
there's
any
one other person, but he's from a long time ago,
Okay.
like a very historical figure.
And how far out of London, to give me some context?
Oh, God.
Or is that the closest big town?
The closest big city
I just assume, as an ignorant asshole, I just assume,
yeah,
right?
of course, as an American. Closest big city is Norwich, which wrestling fans are probably more familiar with now because of Paige. It's quite funny that, two of the sort of handful of Brits that have had any kind of presence on TV in the last kind of decade or so both come from Norfolk, like, which is, to people from Norfolk is like, what? There's really not a lot of.
Are you counting you as this?
Yes.
Norfolk. So
Norfolk is the county.
Gotcha.
Yeah, Norfolk is the county. But yeah, Norwich is the nearest major city, and then Cambridge is the other sort of close known city.
But so when I think village, because obviously you seem like a very normal person, right? I mean,
yeah, I'm good at pretending.
is it a pretend? Like, no, but I mean, that's an honest question. Like, almost like not even posh, but I think that would be the word that kind of would come up.
I think that when I first got into the business and I was doing the camps for Dixon, I would get a bit of that heat from that team, from that crew, like
Right.
that I was quote unquote posh because I don't speak with an accent. That's not really due to anything other than the fact that neither of my parents speak with an accent. My mother went to grammar school. My father was privately educated, but I didn't go. I just went to a public school. I just went to a state school.
And what did they do?
My dad was a plant breeding scientist, which is basically that was how we ended up out there because it's very agricultural. But my best understanding of it, which is still not very good, is that obviously to get the best yield he specialized in barley, so he would basically go and analyze the yield every year, and then they would take the seeds into a lab and all the rest of it, and then would analyze the molecules and all this kind of the exact scientific terms, and then he would basically decide which strains to breed it with from other places in the world to get the best yield based on weather and all this other kind of stuff. And obviously there are huge implications to things like beer industry and food and cereals and all that kind of stuff. And I feel like for the most part, most of those companies are now owned by pharmaceutical companies, which I always found kind of strange to make the jump. But he worked for like ICI and a lot of the big sort of pharma companies because they were the ones who had the controlling interest in all of the sort of plant breeding stuff.
I always think it's wild when that an industry that just came from people just planting, then all of a sudden becomes big business.
When you look at I look into it because I'm into that stuff, but at the same time I wish I hadn't. It's like Monsanto and all that sort of stuff. Like it's really scary, like what is going on with farming and crops, and I just feel like we're way past the sort of the idea of playing God. Like we're really into it now.
And sometimes that sums me up. Also, I think it's just like if I just pretend it's not happening, I don't have to.
Well, you and I talked about Vice. Like we watch Vice, right? And that's the thing. It's like I love watching it, but then at the same time, afterwards, I go like, "Oh, this is absurd."
Yeah, and that goes back to food also.
Yep.
The more I don't know, the more I can just say, "Okay, well, I'm fine. I just have some meat and some
Ignorance
chicken and call
bliss.
it." Yeah, ignorance is
Absolutely,
bliss.
it really is.
So obviously, you come from a smart family, obviously.
Yeah, I would say
it's
so.
there.
I think we're a family of underachievers academically.
Really?
Academically, yeah. Because I was when I was in high school, I was skipped a grade of high school. I finished a year early, and just went. I don't want to go to university. Like, there's nothing I want to learn there. And when I look at it now, I stand by that decision honestly, because I go like, there are so many Mickey Mouse degrees out there, and I can't be the only one from my generation who felt that way. But now, in my late 20s, even if I was to then decide, I'm going to go and be a civilian and get a regular job, a lot more companies now where the directors and stuff are my generation, they're starting to not care as much about the piece of paper you have and where it came from, but they're more about what you bring to the table on every level.
And also, I think it's to bring it to wrestling. It's about those apprenticeships.
Yeah,
it's about learning under somebody and learning the job and diving into it.
There are so many degrees that just do not prepare you for any kind of
and also
real life,
and also take $80,000 out of your
right.
Yeah,
when I looked at, I've always been a very kind of socially aware person. Like I'm quite a I sort of sit back and observe a lot, and I used to just think all of these people that were at the same time were all looking at university prospectuses and all this sort of stuff because it was what you did, and I was just like, what do you want to do with that? Like, I don't know. I think I'll be a teacher. I think.
Are you the type of person who doesn't go with the flow?
Absolutely.
Like I question, like
if
anytime there's authority
everything.
or anything.
Yeah. No, I do. I don't like. I'm not. I don't think I'm a rebel, but I'm definitely someone who asks the question. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. And then when it came to that, even then I couldn't articulate it back then, but now I look at it and go, I think that there's a lot of people who go to university just to hide away from real life for another 3 years. Like it's this a passive, fearful kind of sheltering
and
from.
It's 4 in America,
and
sometimes 5 in America.
It can be 4 a lot in England if you do a worthwhile degree. Yeah.
Well, same with. I mean, that's like 5 years, the 5th year senior.
Right. And I just think that a lot of those people are coming into. All that happens is by the time they're in their early 20s, now they're getting into the real world, and they still don't know how to balance the checkbook. They still don't know how to budget properly, and they don't understand all these things. Whereas I, luckily, from working as a freelance or independent contractor in a very low-paid business, learned some sort of pretty vital skills quite early on.
You're also one of these people who grew up fast, I feel. Just talking,
too
right?
Fast.
And not only just in the world, but you're just one of these kids who was always like, probably when you were 15, you were like, felt like you were 25, right?
Yeah, I think that's accurate. I grew up with all older siblings, much older. Like both of my parents had been married previously. So, I had all older siblings. I mean, like my closest sibling to me was my brother, who was 2 years older, but everyone else was, way, way older. So I was always subjected to a very adult conversation. And my parents in that respect didn't, they never sort of made any exceptions. I mean, because a lot of the time you find that the youngest kid is often the one who is sort of made the most, where they make a lot more exceptions for them, and all that kind of thing. I don't think that was the case, although I'm sure my siblings would probably disagree. But like, I think that in a lot of ways, it was just, it was a way, there was no other choice but to sort of adapt through osmosis. And that's, I feel like how my wrestling ability, like my ability to work, like, improved during my time in TNA too, because I got there and was just like completely in at the deep end, wasn't prepared at all, didn't have the skill set, didn't have the experience.
Did you think that going in?
I knew I didn't.
Okay.
But what are you going to do? Say like, I don't think I should have this,
Right.
Like, but I also knew that I knew I was a good athlete, and I knew that I understood, I understood what made a good wrestler and a bad wrestler, and I knew what made a good match and a bad match, and things like that. I just knew that I didn't have the right skills in terms of how to conduct yourself, like as a to get it all to work. Does that make sense? So like so for example, I would sit there and I would watch AJ wrestle Joe, and I would go like, wow, that was a really great match. Like I have no idea how someone's able to do that.
Yeah.
But then after a few months of sitting in the dressing room with them and just listening to them discuss, I started to go, oh, okay. And after a while, like the pressure gets taken off you, because you start going, this match is not a result of one encounter between these two. This is years and years of understanding each other and getting to know each other's body movements and timing and creating space, and the chemistry that they've developed over the years and all that kind of stuff. So then you start to go, oh, okay, like it's not like this magic
but it's
thing.
still it's a good feeling, and like that first feeling that you had, because I've had that feeling, and to look at that and be like, what
Yeah,
like you need that,
so
you could then get to somewhere further in your career.
You absolutely have to have self-awareness.
Right. If you're not,
even now, like I look at one of the reasons I decided to move on from TNA was because I went like, God, I've got into such a comfort zone. Like I knew I improved like leaps and bounds from in like tail end of 2011 through like 2012 and into 2013, like was when I just things just kept falling into place every single week, like match by match. I was starting to go, like now I'm like, this is everything's like really starting to just fall into a groove here. Like this is now I'm starting to understand, you know, and every week I just couldn't wait to get back into it and do more and more and more. And then somewhere around sort of winning the world title, which is a really bizarre thing to say. Like when I won the world title, then it just became miserable. But it sort of did, and it was just like, then it was just this sort of everything became like such a challenge again. Like whereas the year leading up to winning the title had been so fun and, you know, exciting because it was. I've been given it like a certain amount of freedom, but at the same time, enough of the support that you absolutely need from the office. And I don't care what anybody says. Like you got all these people that say like, oh, you make your own push, and you're like, listen, you can't do shit if you're getting 4 minutes and you're putting someone over.
And then
like every week.
And there's always that guy, that veteran that comes in and goes, who's gonna take the ball?
Yeah.
Who's gonna step up?
I want someone to take my spot. Like,
Yeah.
all right, well, I need to be booked.
Yep.
You know.
Yep.
Like, and so, you know, I'd been through that period, and I'd been by the time I won the title, I'd been there 5 years, but I was still being referred to and sort of spoken to by some people in that company like I had only been there a couple of years because they'd only been there a couple of years. Mm-hmm. And that was the constant issue. There was this like revolving door of management. So every couple of years you went back to being like, well, I don't know who you are, you got to prove yourself to me. Mm-hmm. And after a while you just sort of go like I'm worn out, you know, from this and but anyway, like that. But going back to it, I started to watch NXT and then started to see like what they were doing with bringing in like who we all know in the industry regard as, you know, some of the very best from all these different places, and started seeing some of I watched. I'm happy to say it. I watched Fergal, Finn Balor wrestle.
Kevin?
Neville.
No, okay.
I would say Ben, but and I like they blew me away. Mm-hmm. And I just went like, shit, man.
You were back to that same
yeah.
place.
I watched it and went, I couldn't follow that.
Yeah.
Like no way. And I just went, but
humbling a little.
Absolutely.
Right.
But at the same time,
especially as you're like the champion of one promotion.
I can't.
And then watching the development.
I don't know. I don't know if I was by then. I'm not sure. But anyway, yeah.
The idea that
once you had it, you're forever kind of in a different bracket, unless you've like made a monumental fuck up. Like if you've had the strap for a significant sort of anything. And I could always point back to at least I did good business when I had the title for TNA. Like the numbers all went up and the houses was
you're one of those people.
No. But
I always checking.
I did.
No,
check.
not saying, but
I did check.
It's always in your brain. It's never. You can't just like
No, but the funny thing is that they never went out of their way to hide any of that from me. Actually, to their credit, we had a guy called Raphael who used to work on the live events back then, who had come from WWE, was a very like savvy, street smart kind of New York guy, really cool dude. He now works for the New York Cosmos soccer team because he's a huge soccer fan. But
football.
Yeah, I'm adapting. See, I'm adapting. And he would make it because he was just sort of one of those guys who he could see like some of the struggles I was going through with like some guys on the roster who maybe thought it wasn't, you know, they weren't quite ready to be semi-main to my main, you know, like they that switch happened a little too quickly for their taste. So there was just a lot of things that were like very obvious kind of shots fired all the time. But I would do my best to sort of not really put it over. But at the same time, it's like it created just this like really rotten sort of feeling in the dressing room and like almost this kind of like generational sort of war for a while. And I was just trying my best to like not put any of it over. But I think as a result of that, he started going out of his way to go like, hey, listen, just so you know, last time we were here, he's like, look, there's only 700 people here, but last time there was like 580. You know what I mean? I'm just letting you know. You know what I mean? And it would be just little things like that. And then they made a point of telling me, like, for some unknown reason, they kept saying, like, hey, the ratings, like, this episode, and this episode, like, were the highest they've been for, like, 2 years and all this sort of stuff. So I would just kind of keep mental notes of all that stuff because, and this, I'm not by any means any sort of person to be held in a regard as, like, a role model to anyone. you know, in the business, unless you want to. You know what I mean? It's like, if you want to ask me something and learn from me, that's fine. But I'm not saying that I am any sort of authority on anything. But if I could offer any piece of advice to anyone, that regardless of what company you work for, unless it's like independence and you're like a year in the business, no matter what sort of money you're dealing with or what, you have to check all that stuff and create like this mental Rolodex all the time of like bullet point things for you to negotiate and to argue for what you're worth. And I would always do that. It goes back to like my first like contract negotiation with TNA. I was just like, they were flying me in and out from England all the time, and I was saying that can't be cost effective, you know. But at the same time, like, I wasn't on any kind of guarantee, so I just did some sort of rough mathematics and went, well, you've probably spent somewhere in the region of 50 grand on flights like last year. Can we take that and kind of add it into an amount of what you paid me total and kind of meet somewhere in the middle and create a
with
guarantee?
you moving to America?
Yeah.
Right. I'll move to America.
I'll move to Florida, and we'll take the 50 grand you spent on the flights and the 60 grand that you paid me, and let's turn that into a, you know, let's find a healthy amount.
Sure.
You know, that's a good living to make for a 23-year-old at the time, and let's make a deal.
Yeah.
You save money, I make more money, and I have security.
Right.
And it was like, there was like a tiny bit of resistance, but at the same time, it was presented in
made all
such
the
a
sense
way
in the world,
that they just just went, okay.
It's funny because I know you're friends with my friend Davari.
Yep.
And Davari's nickname from some of us, I think Sami Zayn is the one who gave it, calls him Cerebral Man.
Really?
Cerebral
I
Man.
never heard that.
It's always
Yeah, he
thinking
is.
business. And
Well, and-
could be, and also not to hit this on you, but could be detrimental to a part or a fault, if that makes sense. If you start thinking of this stuff too much,
I can see that. Yeah.
it does you in.
Well, and it's funny because Sean was really my first real friend in TNA when I came here. He was the first guy to, he became my friend because I got my rooms in my contract. So he
See, look at him, he's working.
To double up. Yeah, of course he did. So he's like, hey, I'll take you under my wing. You know, like, and I knew what it was, but he did impart a lot to me because he sat under the learning tree of Kevin Nash a lot.
Who's the ultimate cerebral man. Yeah.
100%, which then in turn meant that I got to sit under Kevin's learning tree, and even now is still, you know, very, very valuable. Obviously, we're talking about a whole different, caliber of money and sort of fame and level and everything like that. But there were certain things where he would, you know, just say a couple of little things. And sometimes it was just enough to reaffirm to me that I was about to do the right thing. You know, he wouldn't always like go full on, go like, hey, so what are you dealing with here?
Sean or Kevin?
Kevin.
So you did become buddies with Kevin?
Yeah, a little bit.
Right.
Like we're closer now. I actually got to see him a couple of weeks ago at a spot show, and that was actually really good.
At Magic Mike XXL?
Yeah, I've done that like 3 times. No, but I know what you're saying. Like, it can be sometimes the problem is that once they start to know, and you know what I'm talking about when you say they, once they start to figure out that you're one of the thinkers,
Right.
you're immediately kind of one of those guys, you know. So you have to be, but I still maintain that all the top guys are all thinkers,
right?
Too. You know what I mean?
Of course.
It doesn't really change anything. It's just
that's part of being, you know, I don't know. It's just part of being smart. And like, I wish I knew the last like dummy to like fall into main event money and stay there on top.
Right. Like, nobody owes you a living, so they're not going to just give it to you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And the thing is that though that's kind of what I'm getting across, is that like, it's not just when you are going to be a champion in a promotion or anything. It's at every level. You still have to be, and that goes back to the self-awareness where you're like, all right, look, I realize that I don't have any leverage, but you know, they have invested. This was how I thought back then, was like, well, I don't really have a lot of leverage other than the fact that I've never been to WWE. They don't necessarily know whether I would or not, you know? So that was always like an easy thing. But it was more about the fact that it was like, you've invested all this time in me, you know, let's you want it to pay
Just
off.
slip right. It's just gonna slip out.
That was always the
And all that stuff, like it can be broken down even into like, and I never want to like tell the indie guys to like start bargaining, but you know, if you're going to a place for free and wrestling for free, you know, hey, is it worth it to you? Is it, you know, if
you've then told them what you're worth.
yeah, but even in set, like if you don't want to lose that spot, or like you're just sick of doing that drive 3 hours here and there every week for free, like, you know, you got to weigh the pros and the cons. And like it's and a lot of people in wrestling have said like no, like when they realize they can say no and they'll be happy if the answer is no, that's when they start getting a better deal for you. So then that negotiation can work in any way, not just in big contract deals.
And when I think back, I had completely forgotten about it until I forget how it even came up, but I remember. So anyone who's followed my career might know that I started with the Knight family, who are Paige's parents, and one of the, like, they were pretty notorious as far as like being sort of like Paddy and Julia were, for like being pretty sort of gruff and you know, you paid your dues with them, like, and they were very like protective of their spot and their shows, and they're
hard people.
Yeah,
they're hard people.
Yeah,
and of course, Soraya was on the podcast.
Oh, okay, yeah. Well, you know, then you know, but their whole living is from the business, so that's the way they have to be. They have to sort of grind. They have to grind to survive. And I remember I'd completely forgotten about it until I think Paddy might have brought it up, but like the first.
Paddy is Ricky Knight.
Yes, sorry,
who's Soraya's husband.
Yeah. And I have a ton of respect for Paddy, I really do. And it was like the first or second show I ever did for him, and I was a trainee, you know, but it was in like Hunstanton, and a lot of our friends had come to see us, you know, me and some of the other guys from that area and stuff. And after the show was over, I don't even know what possessed me to do it or what, but I just said to Paddy, like, hey, am I getting paid?
Second match.
I think it was it's second or third.
But you sold the tickets.
I sold some tickets.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Okay.
And I just said, hey, am I getting paid for this?
And again, this is you being grown up more than you're grown. You know what I'm saying?
100%.
Yeah.
I was 17.
Yeah.
And I just
acting like a 34-year-old.
I just said, hey, and I don't remember how I'm sure I didn't say it as sort of brazenly as that, but I just said, like, am I getting paid for this? Like, you know, and he just sort of looked and he goes, hold on one second, walks away. And like, next thing I know, here comes Julia. And she's just like, yeah, like,
just gives you a bucket.
Oh my God, like, fucking lit me up. Just like every 4-letter word you can think of, just like, you're lucky you didn't break your fucking legs, like da 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 da, like just dressed me down so hard in front of everyone. And in
Ricky's head, so like, if you play that out, did you play that out? Like, hold on one second. He's like, oh, I'm gonna get Julia. I don't want to be like in his head. What do you think?
I don't know whether I think. Well, what he told me, you know, years later was that he goes, I was so impressed, but at the same time, like,
I didn't want to give you money.
Flabbergasted. No. That's not the end of the story. He goes, I had to go and tell Julia. He's like, because I was so not, he wasn't really prepared for it. Julia, of course, comes in and just fucking lights me up. 10 minutes go by, and I'm just standing there going like, oh my God, what the fuck have I done? Like, and all my friends are looking at me like as if I just took a shit in Julia's handbag or something. Do you know what I mean? And then Paddy came back a few minutes later with an envelope, handed it to me. It had like a tenner in it. You know what I mean? But he goes, it's because you had the balls to ask.
Yeah.
And that was that. And it was like, that was enough of a lesson to go like, you're going to eat some fucking heat sometimes. Like, it's just going to happen.
Yeah. And
like, honest to God, like, my relationship changed with him after that. And, you know, sometimes good, sometimes bad, but it was like, that was it. And immediately I feel like, I mean, I'd have to ask him, but I feel like immediately in his eyes, in that sort of group of lads who all started at the same time, I immediately went up a notch, because it was like, he's the one who wants something. And years later, he said about me, he said, like, it was too early to tell whether he was going to be something in wrestling, but I knew he was going to be something in something.
That's nice.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I appreciated that, because it was like, then I got the gig in Gladiators and, you know, all that kind of stuff. And it's just funny how things work out. Everything's just a series of circumstances.
Yeah.
But it's like,
that scene is a great, like, just psychology, and not in wrestling, just like in psychology.
well, in the entertainment business too, because a lot of there's a lot of parallels in the entertainment business in my limited experience of things that, you know, non-wrestling related, like hosting a TV show and like doing stage and then, you know, Gladiators and stuff. You know, a lot of the similar things, you know, carry over.
Yeah. Let's hit some stuff. I mean, we're going pretty fast here. Let's 12 years old, you said you were in. So, like, you know, I think a lot, and I don't know now, but I think in the Americans' eyes, right, a lot of people were like, oh, here's this guy who was on Gladiator. And, like, you know, I feel my duty to help change as much as I can of what people think of you, right? This guy, oh, he did Gladiators. Dixie saw him on TV, sent him over, and now he's a star. And a lot of people were like, this guy's never done any wrestling before. I don't even think he likes wrestling. He's just a gladiator.
I had that heat 100%.
Yeah.
And, you know, it took me like 2 years to figure that out, too.
Really?
Because I'd been a wrestler since I was 17.
Yeah.
I wasn't a very good one.
Right.
But, you know, I'd been doing the camps and, like, I'd like tagged with like Daniel Bryan, you know, and we'd been like I'd worked with like Gangrel and like Rene Dupree and, you know, Pierre Lafitte and all these guys. And I thought I was like doing great, you know. I was like worked with all these like this big indie star and these WWF guys and
I knew, like, because what year did you do those kind of? What was your camp loops?
That probably
must have been 2003-ish or
no, later than that. It was about 05 or 06.
Okay, because I did 2004 and then I did a little in 2005 at the camp. So, like, I felt I had a good grasp of if I knew who was on the team.
Yeah, no, I came in. I feel like I started for Brian in maybe at the end of 05 or 06.
Okay, yeah.
06 was definitely like my sort of longest term with Dixon.
And Brian had came back and Dragon had came back and done some stuff. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, he wasn't like full timing then because he was too busy with his you know bigger stuff.
But I know for his love for it, he'd sing in and out.
He was coming in for time, and for a little period there, they kept putting us as a babyface tag team. Yeah, which is so hilarious to think now. But yeah, it's funny.
And so, were you like on a full time loop for a little bit? Or?
For a while, yeah. I think from about February to about November of that year was pretty solid.
And that means I'm not doing any other job. This is my job.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
7 days a week for the most part, right?
Oh yeah. From 18, that was it.
And that was your, hey, high school's done. I graduated early. I'm going to do these camps instead of college.
I wanted to be a professional wrestler.
Yeah.
I just went and I just said, look, I can always go to university like later if I want to, but there's nothing I want to do.
Were the parents into it?
No. My mum like really tried hard to just say like, no, please don't do this. You know what I mean? Like what? Like why? You know, just be a fan. Like and my dad had a bit of a different approach because he'd played rugby like professionally, and he said he just sort of went. He obviously could tell that I had, because he was a little disappointed that I had sort of just given up, not given up, but, well, it is the right word, given up, lost interest in my sort of zip in real sports, you know, because I'd been in the national championships for swimming in like 99 in high school, and then in tennis I'd done a couple of years, I'd been in the national ladder, and like football I'd done okay, and like played for a couple, like started to kind of creep up the leagues, and then but I just got so bored of it. Like it wasn't fulfilling
if you're like me, if you have those young dreams of like knowing you're going to do wrestling, I mean, for me it was just like I knew I couldn't do it until 18, so I did all the sports up until 18, and it was like at 18 I was like, I know I'm allowed to be a wrestler now, so why am I doing any of this other stuff?
And I think for me, fitness and bodybuilding had taken on just as much of a passion, like for me, as wrestling. Not in the same way. Like I didn't have any aspirations to ever be a competitive bodybuilder or anything like that. But just that, I suddenly realized that I could learn that stuff like that because I gave a shit. Mm-hmm. You know, it was once you and you care about the subject, it was just like all this stuff was just retained immediately, and I could just spew this stuff like. More stuff then than I can now even. You know, I could just spew this stuff like left and right, and people go like, how did you learn all this stuff? I just read some books.
Well, I think that's everybody listening to this podcast, myself, like everyone in high school going like, you don't know anything about any of this, but you could tell me who the Rockers wrestled and you know what I'm saying? Right. It's like, yeah, of course I can.
And you know, I've had a conversation with Mike Tenay where, and I'm sure Mike, you know, because his perception as the majority of people in TNA's was I guess he probably thought the same thing, was like this guy was a gladiator on TV and like Dixie saw him in a magazine, because that's the story she tells. I don't know if it's 100% as accurate as that, but I can tell you for a fact that I did an interview with FSM and I used that. James, who was the editor at the time, had basically been in contact with Dixie because that particular issue happened to be the first time that a TNA guy had been on the cover, which was AJ. Mm-hmm. And that's how it all looped around. So he'd been talking to Dixie quite a lot. And then I guess one way or another, Dixie had kind of gone, hey, what's this? I saw this like big feature you did on this British kid. Like, what's that all about? So he basically said, well, this is who he is. Like, he's inarticulate. Like, he's a good guy. He's very young and blah, blah, blah. Like, but, and she was just like, well, would you mind putting me in touch? So he reached out to me and said, hey, she wants to talk to you. I said, sure. Kurt tells a slightly different story where Kurt, according to Kurt Angle, which, I love Kurt, but sometimes he can fairy dust the truth a little bit. He reckons he came over to the UK to do some media and was flicking through the TV in his hotel one day and saw me cutting a promo and was like, who the fuck's that guy? Like, he's got to be a wrestler. Like, regular people don't talk like that. I was completely ripping off like Ric Flair promos, and like that was the great thing about Gladiators. Was I had this epiphany where I went, nobody on this roster, or like nobody in this building, not one of the producers, not nothing, apart from the executive producer, which was why it worked out for me, is a wrestling fan. They don't know anything about wrestling.
You could just nick everything.
I stole. Oh my god! Like I would just think through all my favorite promos, and then just tweak it to fit whatever scenario I was in, and it was just I had this unlimited material. I would come back, and like the other gladiators would just be like, how the fuck do you think of this
they had
stuff?
the same thing while you watching AJ and Joe.
Yeah.
That was going through their mind. You're
because
like,
they couldn't talk. They were all like, some of these guys had been in the Olympics. You know what I mean? Like they were killing me like on the athletic front. But like as long as I could hold my own and then get the stick afterwards, like nobody gave a shit.
It's like wrestling.
Right.
And your
I would
advantages and disadvantages.
I would do whatever. And then like if I won or I lost, it didn't matter, because if I lost, I would just make these outlandish claims about like they cheated in some way or whatever.
Yeah.
Or, but it didn't matter, and I would come back and like this one guy, Sam, who was Atlas on that show.
So were you the big heel on the show?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go
like,
on.
but within a few episodes, like they were running commercials with just me because I'd become such a sort of
the personality
standout. Yeah. And like, and they, I remember like Sam would just go like, how the fuck do you think of this stuff? And I would just go like, that's what I do. Like I go to Butlins and I normally most of the time I'd be a baby face. Like I had to plead with Brian to let me be a villain, because he'd be like, no, yeah, you're a big lad, you got a good body, you can't be a villain, I need you to be a blue eye. And I'd be like, come on, Brian, I'm so much better as a heel, and eventually let me do it. And because I could have good matches with guys like Dean, like the smaller high flying guys, then he was okay with it because I could be like a good base.
And for the uninitiated, Gladiators was a big. So when American Gladiators rebooted in America, they also rebooted in the UK, and it was just as big, right? On national television,
it got a ton of. The thing that really got me over more than even the show was just the amount of publicity that it got before it even went on the air. Like they spent millions on their advertising campaigns.
But that was the same way in America too. It seemed like the same plan.
It was all, we were all kept under wraps. Like we couldn't tell anyone, and like when we were cast and everything like that. And then like in one day they had like this. It was like May the 1st or something like that, and they had this. They made all the press releases, but then on the same day, they already had all these billboards. We were on buses, on the London Underground, everywhere. So suddenly, people completely out of the blue were just suddenly presented with like all these people. And people would be calling me people called me for 2 weeks, just going like, I've just seen you at a bus stop. Like, what the fuck?
And did wrestling help you get that gig?
Yeah.
Was it because of wrestling you got that gig?
Yeah. But in a very roundabout way, which is why it's always good. Even if you don't really have aspirations to be an actor, like I don't really, but it's always good to try and sort of maintain keep abreast of things like Actors Access and a few little things like that, where just if there's a casting where you think you might get it, it's worth always putting in, I think. Because I had done this really weird live stage show. It was like a stunt show called the Thunderdome Games at the Birmingham NEC, which was like a motorcycle stunt show, but they had a character. Like basically to give the show some sort of theme, they had this character called the Judge, right? And it was like Domino, who you might know. From,
the original Domino.
Domino from Deuce and Domino.
He was a DJ on the radio and then became a wrestler.
Yes. Big bodybuilder looking guy. Great. He's a nice guy, Mark. He's a good dude. He had done it one year, and then I forget whether it was him. I think what happened was they put the casting brief out again, and one of the UK Pitbulls, had sent it to me and said, "This came to us, but we're too fat. You should try it because you've got a good body." So it said like shaved head, but it was like, you know, in the end, I sort of bartered them down. It's like, well, can I just do like a mohawk, like rather than just completely shave it? And I had like, and then so they made me grow a goatee, which luckily I could. And then, so I sort of had a bit like I basically made myself try and look like Chuck Liddell for a couple of weeks. And basically for 2 weeks, like I just would stand on this sort of huge stage, like while all these like motorcycles like flying over my head and like doing stuff like in the sphere and all this like crazy stuff. It was like rehearsed, and I would just stand there with this like little microphone and be like, now it's time for the Scorpions. You win, like, and all this kind of just stupid, like just basically like host it. To
Improv or easy gig? Improv or just lines given?
There was it was a loose script.
Okay,
so it was like, but then there was like periods where you could sort of they needed you to G up the crowd. That's why Carl, the director of that show, wanted a pro wrestler, because he was like, I need someone who can feel like when to like, you know, get the audience to kind of pick up a little bit and when to let the action speak for itself and like have that feel of like when to kind of, you know, and how to like connect. He'd come to a Butlin show and he said, I'd really like to see you get on the microphone if you can. I had to like beg.
Oh, so your tryout was to go to it.
He basically came to Butler's. He lived not far away from Bognor, I think.
Yeah.
And he basically came to Butlins and like met with me earlier in the day, and he's like, the show was that night, and he goes, I don't really care about the wrestling. Like, I just want to see you connect with the audience.
Yeah.
Like, you know, because you physically fit the description I want. I just want to see that if you can connect with an audience. So I had to like beg Brian to like let me get on the microphone for some like random reason, because like they didn't really do it on the Butlin shows. You know, it was always just kind of in and out.
Dragon used to sing the American national anthem wrong.
For Heat, yeah. There was a few, but this thing, the villain would normally do the talking, right?
Yeah.
But I was a babyface at the time, so I think Brian set up something where I, you know, challenged the guys to. I forget what it was, but it was just something. And obviously, I just did like whatever I could to just completely pander to the audience, get like a cheapest pop I could. Carl sort of was like, "Yep, you hired, like great." And off the back of that, we did that. It was fine. It was a good little payday. It was like a couple of grand, I think, for like per week, and then. I want to say like a year later or something, he called me out of the blue because he had an agency. Like he specialized in like stuntmen and stuff. And he basically was just like, hey, can you swim? I said, yeah, I'm a good swimmer. And he's like, well, what about like climbing walls and stuff like that? Can you do that? And I was like, yeah. And I was thinking like, oh, maybe it's like a movie or something.
Cliffhanger too.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was hoping. And he goes, oh, because they're bringing back Gladiators and I put you in for it. I just wanted to make sure that that you can actually do all that stuff. I go, fuck yeah. Okay, yeah. And then I went to the tryouts and that was that.
And the rest is history.
Yeah. And that
amazing.
Opened the door.
And then you showed up on television. We all thought you were just a gladiator.
Oh God. Well, it didn't help when like Vince Russo had me wear like a fucking gladiator.
Yeah. What was it? Magnus Brute?
Brutus Magnus.
Brutus Magnus.
Yeah, brutal Magnus, I called it.
But you know, it's a testament to you that you know, you broke through that heat.
Yeah, I muddled through the early shit.
And not only that, but all the heat from the wrestling world too.
Yeah.
And
I did. I got eaten up for a long time.
Yeah.
But I did deserve it. You know, like here's the thing: is that now I've seen other guys come in with similar sort of circumstances, and I've been inclined to be like, and then I've remembered like, this is probably how a lot of people thought about you.
Yes.
And so, you know, that's what comes with the time and the reps, you know what I mean? You just start to realize that, unfortunately, but it's part of the business, but at the same time, I don't think it's a bad part necessarily. It's you know, it's not always necessarily a fun part, but it is something where, like, because the guys take pride in the business and they take pride in the art of it, in the art of wrestling.
There it is.
There
Full
it is.
circle.
That, you know, they don't just want it to be just available for anyone to come in.
It's a weeding process.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, of course.
Like, and I think that it should be like that way.
Yeah. So, I mean, going further, future. I want to say future, further, and another word I can't think of.
We got there in the end.
Yeah, I think you get the idea. You're helping you're doing some global force wrestling stuff in the UK, right?
Yeah. So basically, when Jeff and I first talked, I mean, obviously I would sort of maintained a relationship with Jeff anyway. He'd always been a guy who looked out for me, and I knew that Global was sort of in their sort of very embryonic days, and they still are. But when I made the decision independently of that to just say like whatever happens, but I need to move on from TNA because it's like I'm 28 and I'm in like a comfort zone, and it's not really, I'd rather be doing something else in a completely different industry and being like challenged and vibrant and like into it again.
You wanted that feeling again. Yeah, I get it.
Jeff obviously called me right away and was like, "What? Let's work. You know what I mean? Let's get to work. Let's do this." I said, "Okay, great. Whatever you need, like, come to work." And I said, "What's your plans with the UK? It's the hottest market. I mean, let's face it. If I'm going to work for you, and let's, there's so much good talent there. You can't afford to keep bring them all over here.
UK is like the new East Coast."
Really is.
Yeah.
Really
They're
is.
so good
So
over
many
there.
good promotions.
Yeah.
Like drawing and with like their own audiences and their own. Well, you and I just worked at ICW last week. I was so glad to finally go there because I'd seen it, it's all this time and just been like, fuck, I want to go and work there, And it really, really is. Like, Zack Sabre just won the PWG Battle of Los Angeles, and Marty and him fucking tore the house down. But they have everywhere in the UK. Like, they've been doing everywhere.
Yeah,
but but especially now that they're both starting to get more seasoned, and they're a couple of years younger than me. Like, they're in this like mid-20s, and it's just thank God that there's finally this sort of recognition. But I just said to Jeff, a business partner, like a friend of mine, Luke, and we decided to partner up on and I said, let's just dip our toe in the water a little bit and just run a couple of shows and see what happens. Luke works for ATG, who are a big theater company, so he's very experienced at like the administration side of things, which I am not good at. And because you're a wrestler, a lot of people don't really give you the time of day when it comes to the real deals, like the good deals. Whereas Luke can go, hey, I've been running Wicked in the Apollo in the West End for the last 2 years. Like, let's make a deal. And they go, okay, great.
Right.
Anyway, I basically explained this to Jeff and said, do we want to get our feet wet with a couple of GFW shows instead? And he was just like, yes, like, let's do it. He's like, whatever, like, go for it.
It's one of those? You have a couple coming up, right?
Yes, it's October the 28th at Grimsby Auditorium, and then October the 30th at Linsport, which is my hometown. That's where I was born. And, a lot of people might, especially in the UK, like the more, I hate to use the word smart marks, but for lack of a better term, although you might scoff at those towns and be like, oh, yeah, we're all big time, you know what I mean? But it's deliberate in the sense that we're going to iron out the creases of
the not hitting central London off the bat.
Fuck right.
Yeah.
And like the live events are not, to me, you can bung a ring in a building and you can get a sound system, right? And you can get some wrestlers and you can make them they can tear the house down in a brilliant match. That's only going to satisfy the absolute diehard fans. To me, what we're trying to achieve with a limited budget is the entire experience from when they walk through the door to when they walk out the door. Luke and I, obviously, because he's a great example of someone who you should try and work with in the wrestling business, in the sense that he's not a fan of the business, but he does enjoy it in limited doses. But he is an entertainment guy. Like, he doesn't disrespect the business, but he's not like this diehard fan. He knows who a few guys are, but he'll go to a show. Like, he just went to an independent show over there just to do some recon and stuff, because he was like, I want to go and see what I like and what I don't like.
Yep. And that's a good model. Like, if you want to be the guy who impresses that kind of guy,
yeah,
you're a good wrestler when you can impress that casual guy.
Sure. It's not the kids. It's their dad who they dragged along, who's like, oh god, all right, fine. Well, the kids like this stupid wrestling, but then at the end they go, I'll tell you what, that one guy was impressive. And who, for me, and again, I'm so glad for his success, and I don't, it's not like I need to kiss his ass, because he knows how I feel. But Joe was always that guy to a lot of people. I found when I did my own little bit of research, it would always, my dad, for example, they came to a couple of TNA live events, like the bigger ones, like Wembley and stuff, and it'd be like certain people. And my dad, I like that Samoa Joe. He was a real, like, he was really good. Did he ever play rugby? Like, he was, he'd be like, oh man, he was, and then there'd be My dad really, surprisingly, was really like high flyers too, like really good, like really talented high flyers. So because he was like, that's amazing when it's done right.
Also, something that I can't do will always impress me.
Absolutely.
So the guys like the Evan Bournes of the world, or or the Ages of the world, do something that I can't do.
Like me, and I've been having to follow fucking Andrew Everett and Trevor Lee on a bunch of these live events. I'm going like, oh, you're killing me. You know what I mean? Like, but I don't resent them, but I'm just like, fuck, I can't. How am I supposed to follow that?
You've got something when you're that guy.
Yeah,
and then also, tell me about your book before we get out of here.
So it's called The Superstar Body. It's available
based
now.
after me.
Yes, it's got. But to be in an unrelated note, it does actually. One of the unique factors of the book is that I basically from the beginning said, look, I don't think that anyone should take advice from just me, but I had enough people ask me over the years, and I developed enough writing skill through my column for FSM where I knew I could. I was quite a decent writer. And the opportunity came up with a publisher, and so that was that. And but I did decide from the beginning to enlist like input from a lot of other people, so that the idea is that, hey, if you want to look like the guys on TV, here's obviously the main meat of it is from me, but here are some other really key kind of other areas from. So, for example, we've got Kurt Angle's written some couple of really great pieces. Like one's about like mental visualization and about like even I was like genuinely interested to because I was like, oh, that's so interesting. David McIntosh, who was on Gladiators with me, but is like just one of those bodies that just makes you go like, oh my god, like. Why do I even bother? Like he's just like ripped to shreds, like perfect proportions, all the time.
Just like me.
Former Marine and hard as nails. I mean, I may as well have been talking to you,
right?
But he's contributed some great stuff, and like some other guys like big Rob Terry, who again really as far as physique does really needs no introduction. A couple of the girls, Mickey's included a little bit, about getting her body back after having a baby. Brooke, who again, she's known for having this this great body and everything, but it's not by accident. She works out hard, man. She's got a really dialed in diet and everything like that. Dwayne LaDeja, who was in the Olympics, a couple of like top trainers, the CEO of a supplement company, like they all, I called in a lot of favors from a lot of friends to write some really kind of interesting pieces to help me. Just throwing money around.
I don't know if they caught on the mics, but
Dixon would be here right now. Dixon would pick it up and go. He did this once. This is so great. We were all just standing around on the balcony, and Dixon came out and he's like talking to us for a minute, and then he was getting a rock, and he stopped what he was saying mid sentence and looked down and picked up a penny off the ground, and he just looked at me and said, "Look after the pennies, the pounds look after themselves," and walked away, and everyone just like went, "That was just great."
It summed it all up, I think.
Yeah, if he was portrayed in a movie like or anything like that scene has to be in there.
That's in the commercial. Yeah.
But anyway, the book it's available now. You can get a physical copy in the United States, but you have to order it from the UK until November. It's on pre-order. Physical copies are on pre-order in the US till November, but it's through all the major outlets, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, all those things, downloads, Nook, Kindle, all that stuff. So you can really just search the Superstar Body and it will come up anywhere. But we have a website for the book too. It's called superstarbodybook.com, and there's a list on there of all the different outlets you can get it, download. I think like the download is like $7.99.
Great.
And it's not a wordy, like over scientific, bunch of jargon. It's spoken to you in real digestible language, in kind of short digestible pieces that are as to the point as I can be without being patronizing.
That's how I like it.
Yeah,
BuzzFeed style. I don't.
Yes.
Twitter.
It's our generation, isn't it?
Yeah.
Just give it to me give me what I need. I don't need
all
a bunch
fluff.
of I don't need it. There's as little text as necessary to get the amount of information across.
Perfect. And then
there's a few pictures too.
You give me your Twitter and everything.
Twitter is still at Magnus Official.
Great.
My website is nickaldis.com. I mean, who even goes to people's personal websites anymore? But if you want to book me or you want to contact me for anything or anything like that, it's nick@nickaldis.com. Very simple.
Cool, man. We're done.
Great.
I appreciate you coming on.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Thanks, man.
All right, if you're out there in Europe, go check out those Global Force shows. Also, pick up his book if you're a bodybuilder like me. Oh, the one thing I did want to say is a lot of people, I think because I said the weight loss that I had was on the DDP episode, it was not from DDP yoga. I never do or have not done DDP yoga, but it's the idea of he's getting people in shape, and I had gotten myself in shape. So still under the 235 mark, so I'm excited about that, and I've kept it off for over a year now, so I'm excited about that. That goes in with Nick's book, so if you want to do that also, find the way that works best for you to get rid of what you want to get rid of, and maybe that's a way to get helped by buying his book. I appreciate you coming on. Real good episode. Let's get out of here. Before we do, let's get in some plugs and
Upcoming events.
All right, the best way that you can support ColtMerch.com, DigitalColt.com, Twitter and Instagram at Colt Cabana, Facebook /AOW Podcast and /Colt Cabana, ColtWrestling at gmail.com, my very public email. If you need something, send me an email. CutMyPromo.com is my YouTube show, or you can just find it on my YouTube channel. And ColtCabana.com is my website. Redone. Looks good. Thanks, Brady. P.O. Box is on there. Send me something fun in the snail mail. Upcoming Sunday, September 20th. If you're in St. Petersburg, Russia, hit me up, nswrestling.ru. Sunday, September 27th. Said this wrong last time. Port Hanume? You get the idea. California, HollywoodWrestling.com. Sunday, October 3rd in the afternoon, Monroe, New Jersey, legendsofthering.com. That's a signing, but at night, I'll be at Union, New Jersey, back for ProWrestlingSyndicate.com. Saturday, October 10th, Enfield, Connecticut, Us versus Them Wrestling.com. Friday and Saturday, November 13th and 14th, Philadelphia and New York, houseofhardcore.net. Saturday, November 28th, Winston-Salem, North Carolina, back for WrestleCade.com. Always a fun time when I'm there. That's it. That's the show. We're out of here. Big thank you to you at home for listening. I superly, duperly, truly appreciate it. Thanks to Magnus, Nick Aldis, Brutus. You get the idea. Appreciate you coming on. Thanks to Couple Guy Jeff and Stu Stone, Kid Russell, Matt Jenkins on the music, Dane Miller with the tech. HighSpots.com. Hundreds of full-length titles available to download, plus all the $5 wrestling titles you need. AMA knee pads, gear, a wrestling ring, and some real cool titles they've had lately. They're always putting out great stuff. HighSpots.com. OneHourTees.com. You can get any kind of t-shirt there. Also, ProWrestlingTees.com, where you can get any independent wrestling shirt that you want to help support your favorite wrestlers. Money goes directly to them. Great way to help out this whole circle of indie wrestling. Tweakedaudio.com/Colt, the earbuds that I use. Get over 30% off and free shipping just because you listen to this show. There it is. The show is done. I am out of here. Gonna go hang out and bang out. That was stupid. I'm going to Russia. When you hear this, I'll be packing for Russia. I wonder what to expect for Russia. I think I'm going to try to document some stuff. I don't know. Hopefully some cool stuff comes out of me going to Russia, besides me coming back with a Nikolai Volkov hat. You know I'm going to get one. I hope they bring me Volkov hats. This has been The Art of Wrestling. For Colt Cabana, I'm Colt Cabana. Thanks. Ya shakara yasuru shosharehu. Oh, hoshire sasharo. Yo shoshabino. Yarakadatayaro. Ya shakadu shashahoshala. God bless America. Russia #1.